Seems like it was just a few minutes ago. All right, so next up is our friends at LA County Department of Regional Planning. We have Nick Franchino. He's the GIS manager there, and Dan Hoffman and Liza Wright, who work for and with Nick. And they are going to be discussing oil wells and housing, how GIS was used for planning and engagement.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a moment. All right. And then we're going to go to the top and we're going to hit play. Make sure you can hear me okay. And can you see those? Okay, yes. That works. All right, perfect. Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Nick Franchino, and I'm the GIS manager for the LA County Department of Regional Planning, joined today by Dan and Liza of my team. And we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to tag team this presentation, talking about some tools that we created for planning and engagement. And so this is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the oil and gas wells viewer and dashboard. We're going to talk about the housing element update, the portal app, and the story map. So we'll go through these and hopefully it's worth your time. I think it will be. So right now I'm going to just jump right in and tell you that planning and GIS, they go hand in hand. And really, you can see that in these items here, how important it is to support their analysis, how important it is for making better decisions. I think for us, that's why we're ESRI customer 20. And why almost every project in our department has some GIS that's sprinkled into it. So there's 10 million residents in the county, there's 4,000 square miles, there's 88 cities, and the rest is unincorporated. And that is what we care about. That's the part that we manage. And so this just shows you those yellow areas that are unincorporated. There's about 100 or so communities, 120 or so, depending on how you count them. And so this is the meat of what I'm going to cover today, the oil and gas wells viewer and dashboard. And so with this, I do have a quick note. This was really developed with Fatty Toma, one of my former team. So David mentioned that you want your team to go and get out there, and he's the GIS manager now for the Register Recorder County Clerk. And so thank you, Fatty, for all your work on this effort as well. So important things to know about this is really one of the main things. It's internal applications. This was internal, created for our team that is creating the oil wells ordinance. So that's the team that is creating this. And so again, also it is for unincorporated areas only. So they care about active wells and idle wells, but they also now care about plugged wells, and they ignored some of these other ones. So not too big of a deal. And some more background, again, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you some pictures of those residential zones and why that is so important to them. And so these are some other items. They want to know where it is in relation to community standards districts and ecological areas and things like that. We used Web App Builder. We used Operations Dashboard. We've seen some of that over the last 2 days. And then in the engagement part, we use these tools for our presentations to these stakeholders, to the Board of Supervisors, the different offices, and to some of the different teams that we've met with. So here's, I have to mention, this is where the data comes from. It's the state of California, Department of Conservation. CalGEM is the division that deals with oil, gas, and geothermal. They have a database and an application. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, this WellStar and WellFinder. So again, here's why it matters. Here's an oil well within a mobile home park. This is in the South Bay of Los Angeles County. So here's another area. Here's 8 active wells next to a commercial strip and also next to a couple of different subdivisions. Here's an office park that has 3 of these active wells in the parking lot. So this is the visitor parking, or this is the employee parking, and that is an oil well right there. So again, some other things that we want to know, again, is kind of why we created this, was to get at these questions that we knew were going to come up. We knew that they were going to ask us, well, how close are they to residential zones, and how many of them are active or idle in these areas? And so we needed to supplement the well finder site. And so we created a viewer, and then the idea was, well, we really needed 2 viewers. So we did an app and a dashboard. So this is the screenshot of the CalGEM well finder. Again, there's nothing wrong with this application. It works. You get the data, you can see it, the map, it's the whole state. It's very nice. There's no issues with it, but it doesn't work 100% for us. There's no add data button. There's no way to integrate our data with this. There's no way to get to those questions of how many are in supervisorial district 3, or how many are in the 4th district, or how many are covered by this permit. So these are the things that we can do by making our app. So this is a screenshot of our app. This is a splash screen, again, for internal use only. And this is it. You know, it's web app builder. It's a full featured app. You can pan and you can zoom, you can turn layers on and off. There are lots of functionality. The filter widget is the key one. In fact, I answered a question from our director just the other day using that widget about a question about how many active and idle wells and some of the other features in the data that we have. And then what you can do is you can click on a well and you can get information, and you can link directly to what, again, CalGEM, nice site. You can get the well record, but we also link it to our assessor parcel data. And so other information, other land information is there as well. And of course, our other GIS web application that's internal, we have access to oblique imagery that we have from Eagle View. And of course, again, the idea is we're just getting and linking to more data, making more info available for the teams that need it. So here's the dashboard. So this gets to the key numbers. The dashboard is just to answer those questions. How many here, how many there? Kind of just simpler, easier for those non-GIS folks, even though you can still interact with the map and turn layers on and off. So for example, there's 24 wells in the 3rd district. Very simple. And you can see on the map there that there's at least 1 or 2 of them are active and the rest are idle. And then I can do the query and say, well, how many are idle and within 1,000 feet of a residential zone? And that's only 2 of them. So again, these are just one simple example that I wanted to show you. So the power for filtering, kind of mentioned that. Here's just kind of a screenshot of the different options that they have by SUP district, the well status, active, new, or idle, whether they're within that residential setback. We had to do some buffering of these areas. If it's actually within one of our zones, because some of them are. And then we have other things, what community, whether it's on a county-owned property or not. So these are the things we get to. So some key takeaways, and this is really the main thing for us. Again, it's for unincorporated areas only. It serves these, and again, the app and the dashboard serve different purposes, or the viewer and the dashboard. Depending on the meeting, I have them both open usually, or my team will have them open, and they're kind of asking questions as we're running and following and then giving them the live numbers that they want. And they're taking notes and whatever. So that's been really good. I mentioned already web app builder and the operations dashboard. I think those are key. We did a lot of spatial filters of the data. We enriched the data from CalGEM to be able to make this work. A couple more notes. It's still being prepared, this ordinance. We're doing presentations and discussions of the key issues for sure. And we're also working to update the underlying data by early next year. So one of the cool things too, we gave the board offices and these other stakeholders access to the viewer so that they can go down their own rabbit holes, ask their own questions. And it's all been really positive reviews. That it is working for them. So that's a really good thing. So that's my portion of today, of this talk, and I'm going to hand it over to Dan, and he's going to talk to you next, and I'm just going to process the slides.
All right, thanks, Nick. Everyone hear me? Good. Yes, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Hoffman. I'm a GIS analyst with the Department of Regional Planning. My colleague Liza Wright and I have been on this housing analysis adventure for quite a while now, and it's coming to a close. So I'm going to talk about the portal app that we used at the beginning of the project, and then hand it off to Liza, who will talk about the story map that was used at the end of the project. Next. So just a really brief overview what the housing element is. It's the county's housing policy guide for the unincorporated areas. And all jurisdictions in the state are mandated to update this every 8 years. So we are currently updating the 2021 through 2029 cycle. And one of the foundations of the housing element is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. Rolls right off the tongue. Let's just call it RHNA for short. This is where the state estimates each region's housing needs for the upcoming 8 years. So as you can see by the image on the bottom left, our RHNA for this cycle is 90,000 housing units, which is 3 times what we had to deal with at the previous cycle. So already a challenge at the outset. Per state law, the housing element must include a site's inventory that shows that there's enough land in the unincorporated areas where these 90,000 units can fit, basically, and built under current land use and zoning regulations. So this is done through identifying current sites that are either vacant or underutilized. And if not enough sites can be met with the site's inventory, then we have to establish a rezoning program in which we identify sites to upzone and allow for more density. Next. So the first step in this process was to identify the sites that are available, and we did that through modeling and came out with a number of 24,000 parcels based on certain size and land use characteristics. So the strategy at first was to call on departmental volunteers to go through all these parcels. And every planner works in different areas and has different levels of expertise in these areas. So 40 staff volunteered for this. So we decided to do an internal portal app using ArcGIS Enterprise. And the big advantage of that is you don't have to create 40 new ArcGIS Online logins. It's all, you just go on the county network and start working. So we did this for synchronous editing amongst all the 40 planners. So we did some training and some documentation, and after that, the planners were well on their way. Next. So each planner worked in their assigned area, so there was no worry about a parcel being edited by 2 people at the same time. And we wanted to make the editing tool simple, but able to update multiple parcels at once. So the batch attribute editor tool was the most commonly used tool in this process. So as you see in the screenshot here, there's the blue rectangle where someone selects a bunch of parcels. And next. So since a large group of parcels have shared codes and recommendations, the pop-up comes up and then the 4 editable layers are there. So a planner can enter in whether it's a candidate for rezoning, whether it's underutilized or vacant, and enter in any applicable notes. And in cases of rezoning, enter in a proposed zoning category. Next. Now it should be mentioned that there are 2 editable parcel layers. One is the main site's inventory layer, and then one of surrounding parcels, because in some cases you want to code adjacent parcels to what you're looking at. So both parcel layers are edited at once and saved, and then the color changes so that everyone knows it's been edited. Next. Then there was simultaneous to this, there was a dashboard that was created. This was really easy to make, but it looks really cool. So it was was very well received, and it's a great way for housing staff and upper management to visualize the process of this, where which categories were being coded to where, what category, and how many have been done. And next. So I am at time, so I'll wrap this up. Overall, the portal app was well received because it was so easy to use and the live editing was great. One of the biggest triumphs of this was the live editing made it really streamlined the process, because previously we would have to export a bunch of spreadsheets, then the planners would update the spreadsheets, then we'd take them back, join it to the GIS layer. It's no fun to juggle a bunch of spreadsheets and do all that sort of stuff. So this was a great way to speed up the process. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Liza, and we'll talk about the story map.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Liza Wright, also GIS analyst with regional planning. And to continue on from Dan, I'm going to quickly run through the housing element rezoning program, which he kind of touched on, and how it relates to environmentally sensitive and naturally constrained areas. And then also how ArcGIS Online Story Maps helped us visualize the housing element process for all stakeholders. Next slide. So for a quick high-level overview of the housing element rezoning program, again, as Dan mentioned, the county unincorporated areas needed 90,000 units to meet RENA. And since we fell short of the goal with the sites inventory, kind of what Dan outlined, we needed to incorporate a rezoning program in the housing element to allow for more housing. So the question was, where should more housing, especially multifamily housing, be built? Some of the main goals of the program were, as you can see on the screen, to encourage infill development within urbanized areas, prioritize public health, safety, and equity, be near transit, amenities, services, and within areas served by existing infrastructure, like public water and sewer systems. We also needed sites that were outside of environmentally sensitive or naturally constrained areas, which in the map to the right, you'll see in the dark red, which encompasses a lot of our unincorporated areas. Next slide. So sites in environmentally sensitive or naturally constrained areas include areas such as coastal zone, fire hazard severity zones, significant ecological areas, hillside management areas, and some others. Again, sites in these dark red areas were not selected for rezoning as they're not suitable for multifamily housing development. So in the example on the screen, you can see Soup District 3, it's zoomed in there. A lot of those areas, our unincorporated areas, are covered by these constraints. Next slide. So another question was, how likely is a particular site to be suitable for housing development? Per state law, sites included in the rezoning program must be suitable for housing in the upcoming 8 years. In other words, the site must be developable with sufficient water, sewer, and other utilities to support the housing development that would occur. So if a site is not vacant, some other factors that were considered were age of existing buildings on the site, land value vs improvement value, and probably like sites that have been contaminated, like gas stations. Next slide. So for the story map itself, we were able to do a English and Spanish version for all stakeholders. Within the story map, we set up sections for each soup district and included interactive map action Zoom links for our unincorporated areas. We utilized sidecars to show the difference for land use policy versus zoning. And quickly, every parcel has both a land use category and zoning that determine what can be built there, if you didn't know. Land use category describes the general intended uses and the number of homes per acre allowed on the specific parcel. And then zoning specifies the housing types and the permitting process. Next. So here I have a snapshot of our story map. I didn't want to do it live. Sometimes things go wrong. So we'll put a link in the chat for everyone. So within the story map, you can see we are visually showing where land use policy changes are. On the left-hand side, you can see the Zoom links based on our unincorporated areas for that soup district. And then at the zoomed out scale right now, we have point features. Next slide. And when you zoom in, we change to parcel based, and you can see the rezoning changes. So this is for land use policy, and we have the pop-up with the AIN, link to the assessor site, and then we show the existing and proposed land use for each parcel. Next slide. So as mentioned, for the sidecar, we switched. So now you can see there's like a difference for the zoning, and it's set up the exact same way, where the links are on the right now. Can you go to the next slide? And then instead of the land use, you can now see we have existing zoning and proposed zoning. So some takeaways: the RENA capacity map on the screen shows the distribution of sites throughout the county. And this is just for RENA, the 90,000 units we keep talking about. So this includes not just some of the rezoning that I just went over. It includes sites inventory that Dan went over and other various county projects. The project included, all of our planners along with GIS team. It was a very iterative process going back and forth. And all this information is in the story map. It was just a very large project, so it's hard to cover in just 10 minutes, but go to the story map and check it out. Next slide. So we didn't have time to go into some other key projects, but some of them are our oak tree mapping project, our UAS program, our drones. So you can check out our exhibit hall if you're interested. And that's it.